All right, so here's a little tutorial about how to work with your slabs. You're going to make one slab box and one lab cylinder. They're both going to have bottoms, and neither will have a lid or top. But the way to make a slab is first you want to start with actually rolling out the slab. So either watch that tutorial about how to make a slab without a roller, or you can use, if you're in person, you can use some guidelines and use a roller and roll a slab this way. You can do either one. You want to make sure either way that you keep flipping the clay as you create your slab, either slapping it on both sides or rolling it on both sides so you get a nice even layer. And basically, as far as thickness goes, you want to hold up your ruler and you want to be under 1/4 of an inch, but at least you want to be 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch is right there in your ruler. So make sure you have that on hand. If it's too thin, it's just not going to hold up, it's not going to stand, it's not going to be workable. So within about 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch is where you want to kind of go. And you want to, now sometimes when you work with slabs, you actually work with templates. We're not going to do a template for this one. This is going to be just kind of building and like learning how to arrange. But you want to take a straight edge. You want to slice down so you have one nice straight edge. And then you want to take your ruler, and to make sure you have an even slab, you're going to mark off as big as you can go. So for right now, I can do, let's go with 3.5. So mark it at the ends, and then I line it up to my ruler, and I slice off the excess here as well. And the next thing I just do is slice off my ends, and I'll just do it on one side. And then you have the walls you can use for your cylinder. Now right now this is a little too wet. So if I try, it's a little too soft. It was recycled clay that's now been wedged. But if I try and build right now, it's going to be a little hard to hold its shape. So I'm going to let it sit up for a little bit and just dry on my board. I could put a hairdryer on it for only like a minute, at most 2 minutes, just to let it get a little bit firmer. If it gets too firm, it's not going to bend. But if it's too muddy, it's going to fall over all over the place. Okay, so once your clay is dried a little bit, you can go ahead and start working on building your form. Now normally there's a different process you can work on with templates once you've gotten used to how to work with slabs, but when slabs are kind of new to you, it's a little tough to work with a template first. It's hard to create a length of slab that'll fit a certain kind of size circle. So what I suggest you do is make your slab, cut it down, looks like it is here, and get a sense of what you can do size-wise. Get a sense of what kind of circumference you can get. And then, once you have an idea, go ahead and take some kind of template. It can be a cup, it can be masking tape, it can be anything, and then go ahead and trace that onto a piece of paper, and then use that to make sure you're building an actual circle. These can get very lumpy when they don't have a guide. So go ahead and place it around your guide. And just like when we did coils, what we're going to do is, I'm actually going to go on the inside of the circle, not the outside. A little bit extra space. So go ahead and line it up. And just like with your coil, you're going to overlap your side. You're going to take a cutting tool. It can be a knife, it can be your poker. You're going to make a diagonal cut that goes the length of the wall. Diagonal cuts, remember, they're stronger than straight cuts. You're going to take off your excess. And then you want to take your extra clay. If you want to let it dry out, that's fine, but if you're going to need it for something else, make sure you put it in a saran wrap or spray it down. And then you're just going to go ahead and score these two sides and slip them together, and you'll have your wall started. So I shouldn't really move the clay around when it's this delicate, but you can see you want to make sure that you get that seam obliterated as much as possible. And if you can address the inside seam as well, that's great. But if you do that, make sure you're supporting the outer wall with your hand. You don't want to just press against a new seam like this and have nothing there to support it. Make sure you're giving a lot of support. Now, what I suggest you do next, you let that kind of hang out and sit for a second, is go ahead and cut the template you had used. And you'll use that on another slab to trace this out. And remember, I had gone on the inside of the circle, so now when I put this on, the outsides will line up. And that's important. You want to make sure that you never put your form around the bottom. It should always be the bottom going to the outer edge of the vertical wall. That's a much stronger joint for you to make. So once you have that lined up, you just go ahead and score the bottom of the base, or the top of the base. You're going to score the bottom of, it really could be either side. I don't have to actually flip this over. And still be very careful as you hold this one. This is still very pliable and very delicate. You don't want to risk a break to these walls. So once both sides are scored and slipped, then go ahead and join them together. Now this is another time where you want to be careful to line up so you actually have a circle. If any of your walls are getting dry at this point, go ahead and just give them a little bit of rehydration, the little bit of slip water. Make sure you have your circle as best you can. And then go ahead and join those seams. Now if your walls are thick enough, you can also try and join the seam on the inside as well. If your walls are thinner than this, you might just end up poking a hole into your wall. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest it if your walls are thin. If your walls are thick, go ahead and do that, because that would be a really helpful way to keep your whole sculpture from breaking apart. So now once you have all your joints covered, so you can't really see them anymore, what you want to do is let this firm up a little bit. You want to get to the leather hard stage. Once it's in the leather hard stage, you're going to do some additional decorations to it. And you can also see how this rim is just like pretty raw. So once it gets to leather hard, we can trim this down with our tools. We can make it narrow, we can make it a straight line. Either one is fine, but we do want to let this get a little bit firmer and then go back into it.